All right. Clap one on three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I'm your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm jazzed to be here.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I have enough of my
Get your
swoopy
bangs,
my
get your
swoopy
swoop
hair.
bangs out. Now, for those who are
Yeah.
listening and not watching, aka most of you, um,
Because
we've
that's
of
how
course
podcasts work.
it is an audio medium primarily.
Yeah.
We have entered the 2024-2025 cosplay season. It's a
Yeah.
tradition here on True Crime and Cocktails. We can't really fully explain why, but
Yeah.
we've been doing this for some time. This is the first of two Halloween cosplays we're going to end up doing. The
Yeah.
second one we're going to be doing for our Patreon brunch over on Patreon. Well, it'll have already happened by the time that this airs,
That is true.
with a different theme. That's a Disney theme.
It is.
Now, this theme that we're currently in is, of course, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, my favorite movie
Yeah.
of all time. This was supposed to be my birthday cosplay earlier this year, got away from us.
Yeah.
But how beautiful that now it was like first costumes, we got them covered.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it it did make me think, should we start thinking that far in advance for cosplay season? We come up with something quick, we buy the pieces, put them away. And then we've just got a go-to costume.
Right.
I'm also, again, we are, what is it? 9:30. Oh, we're like, I can't even do that math. What's that math? Uh, we
16
are
hours.
16, 17 hours away from needing that second costume of cosplay season, and I'm not done.
Neither am I. And I
Yeah.
think the thing for me that's silly is that
Yeah.
I had a costume and then my ego got the better of me. And I said, "You
Oh,
can challenge yourself to do better."
sure.
Didn't get the final piece until today. And let me tell you something. I I have a lot of sewing to do and also have less
Mhm.
than 17 hours. So, and we have to
Yeah.
finish this podcast and we have to sleep.
At some point, at some
Yeah.
point. And I really need to put a coat of paint on one of the costumes that I've made for my children.
You
I
know
have to
what?
mix the paint into a very specific shade, which I don't even know. Like I can't even the amount of meltdowns that I've had in the last 2 weeks. I I don't even know. And that's like not even talking about hockey, which is a sport that I love, but I can't think about right now because it's bleak. Things are bleak. To people who are current are fans of the sport of hockey, what the fuck is happening in the NHL? How are the Calgary Flames really good? What's happening?
Isn't it very early in the season though?
Oh, it's so early. It's
Yeah.
so early. My dream, my absolute dream is that in like December, January, all of the commentators are all saying things like, well, they've really come a long way since the beginning of the year, and this isn't the team that we saw dragging ass at the beginning of the year. They're not going to say dragging ass. Well, some of them might. It's been brutal. It's been brutal. I almost felt like I was gonna pop a vein. It was bad. It was bad. And there is a game tomorrow morning, and I this is how bad this is how bleak it is. I always go into it wearing multiple pieces of merch. There's always a hat, always a hoodie. Sometimes I've got a jersey over top of that. Sometimes I do the gritty pajama pants that I have. Like I just varying degrees of merch. Sometimes also a flyer shirt underneath. Always do that, even when I have no hope. But I'm always like edge of my seat, and I'm always like, come on, guys, we can do this. We can do this. We're in it. That last game, I went into it going, okay, you've hurt me, and I know to expect nothing less from you. So the other team scored, and I went, okay. And then I think the other team scored again. And then my team scored, and I went, okay. So instead of like, I normally am like screaming and I'm like, I'm so excited. Like they're in there. Let's get the hope going. A goal. I just went, yep, we'll see. And then they got a second goal, and I was like, maybe. And then the other team scored. So now it's 3-2. And I was like, okay, no hope. And then my team scored, and I felt hope. Like I felt my hope meter move a
Yeah.
little bit. And then I was like, this is gonna destroy me. The last 2 minutes of that game broke me in ways that I don't even know. So this season already, the 2 weeks that it's been, if this is what I have to look forward to, it's gonna be the darkest year of my life.
I want to share a quick story that maybe
Yes.
will help you, maybe will make you feel better.
I can't wait.
When I was a youth, I I got into I wanted to play sports. I was not good, but I would sign up for the sports.
Sure.
And I did enjoy basketball the most.
Yes.
Here's the thing, not a great player. Just just not naturally athletic.
Sure.
Okay? Definitely worked hard, but I mean, did I win the MDP award one year? Yeah, what's that? Most deserving player. That's not
Hey.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like you
Mm,
came to all the practices and you were on time and you really tried hard even though you weren't very good. Like that's the kind of vibe.
sure. Sure.
One summer, because I'm always coming into tryouts and I'm getting in by the skin of my teeth. I honestly think it was because I was like a good student that they were like, let her just put her on the team.
Give her this. Yeah.
Give her that. Um, one summer I said, no, this year it changes. And I would get up and I would go running, jogging outside every day that summer.
Wow.
And you know what? When it came time in September for basketball tryouts, you know who the fastest one was? Me. I
Hey.
was ahead of all of them. The coach was blown away. The other gals didn't know what to do with themselves. And they were like, you really conditioned yourself this summer. Wow, look at that. And then what happened over the course of a very short amount of time, I'd say maybe 3 to 4 weeks, was that then the other girls got up to the condition that they would normally be in. And I was, even in my peak condition, I was once again the worst one on the team. I share this
Mhm.
because you're saying, how are the Calgary Flames so good? What I'm
Yeah.
saying is they jogged in the off season and just give it a few more weeks. It'll
Sure.
start to even out. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Some
Yeah.
people went for it on their break, others didn't.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
is
you're
what we're
right.
seeing. Some people
It's
need to
true.
shake off keg stands and
Oh, sure.
the
Well,
wild parties and they'll get back.
my team is one of the youngest
Mhm.
collectively. Like I've said it multiple times, I could have birthed many of them
Right.
because so many of them are late 90s, early 2000s born. And that hurts in a way I can't fully describe. So they're very young. So there's a lot of that, I'm sure. If anybody is using a voodoo doll against them, I would love to not do that anymore. And look, Calgary, it's been a while. It's been a while since people have been like, wow, Calgary's like a threat. So I'll give you that. But you got a cup in the late 80s. Sit down. Some of us haven't had one in our lifetime. So
Right.
are
I
we going to
love that
get one
again you're
this year?
talking about
No.
almost 40 years ago and you're like, "Sit down. You gotta go 40 years ago." But I get it.
Yeah.
If you've never had one, I get it.
Yeah. There hasn't been one in my lifetime because the last time they won was 75. And if you think I don't think that it would be perfect for them to win on the 50th anniversary of them winning last, yeah. They also could have won last year and also would have been on the anniversary, but it's fine. It's fine.
How is it the anniversary 2 years in a
Well,
row?
they won 2 years in a row
Oh, there it is.
and then nothing since. and that's fine. They get close a few times, but the point is, yeah, you're right. It was late 80s was a long time ago. In my mind, 10, 12 years. Maybe.
Right.
Like I just
Oh,
can't,
yeah.
But yeah, what I wouldn't give. What I wouldn't give. I know it's early. It's just every team that you expect to be doing well are doing poorly. And
Yeah.
and so you're right. There's got to be something about the off season.
It'll even out. I really think so.
I don't know. I was just like, I need this to change because this is bleak. Like I actually felt sad watching myself, like out of body experience, watching myself not even have hope when my team scored a goal. And I was just like, yep, well, this is going to come crashing down. And it did.
Yeah.
It did. I don't even know, but I still love them. Um,
Of
I even,
course.
I even had a moment where I read some of the comments that people had posted to him, and it's brutal. Like their fans are booing them at home. Like their fans are some of the meanest in this league. Like they're brutal. And
Wow.
I feel bad, so bad for them, but they'll get there. Might take
They
10
will.
years, but they'll get there. They need
Listen,
to. In my lifetime, please.
check in with me in 3 weeks. I bet you in 3
Sure.
weeks, things are going to start to turn around. I'm telling
Sure.
you, I think it's the Lauren Ash fitness factor.
Okay. Well, I'm
LAFF. Laugh.
Oh my God. Lauren Ash, fitness factor.
AKA laugh. Come on.
I can't wait. I'm writing down, do a 3-week check-in in the hopes that I'll remember that.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll check you back in a minute.
Yeah.
I think the other real headline news up to the moment for us is
Yeah.
I'm in this blue wig and I feel like it's a revelation.
Yeah. Oh
I
my
can't
God.
stop. I feel like I look stunning. Like I'm just like
Yes.
I look like a punk rock Disney princess or something. Like I really.
Yeah. Now, I've said this to you before in photos of celebrity men, but this is the first time I'm saying this about a woman. And keep in mind, I'm saying this about you.
Mm,
You look how I would envision a fae.
that's a compliment.
It's the highest of praise I could probably give. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because they're known for like the different color hair, and it suits you.
Yeah, it really does. I never thought blue. I not in my wildest dreams was I like that's on my list. And now I'm going, Lauren, you fool.
Yeah. Oh,
You fool.
it absolutely suits you. And I could not love more that you were like, and the other headline news around here. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about it. She's going to mention that we won awards.
Oh my God, of
And
course.
then it was like the big headline news. I'm fucking stunning in a blue wig. I was like,
What a
shit,
narcissist.
she's right. No, you're right.
I can't stop staring at myself. But look, no, the headline news is that we won
Yeah.
awards.
We
2
did.
Davy Awards. We won a gold for best co-hosts of a podcast. How about it?
We did. Yeah.
Look at these two chuckleheads currently in full Halloween regalia when we are in a very audio medium. That's what gets you. That's award winning, folks.
Yeah. Not the
and
episode
then
we submitted.
and then a silver for the episode.
Yeah.
For crime and punishment or
Crime and mystery, I think it was.
Crime
Yeah.
and mystery. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because I had to think of an episode to submit, and I was like, well, what's one where I can think of that we had just a really good banter time? And the only thing I could think of was how long we spent talking about a dog regurgitating a full human head. So I did submit the episode, the Unsolved Mysteries, Don Henry, Kevin Ives episode.
That is one of the hardest I feel like I've laughed since the Glee curse on this show.
Which is also
an
award-winning episode.
Also an award-winning episode. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that regurgitating of the head was next level.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it didn't take much to think back and be like, what's won this year? And I was like, well, that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh, for
hey,
sure.
look, did we also win gold co-host uh in 2022? We did. Did we
Yes.
win in 2023? We didn't even submit. We didn't have
We
the
did not
time.
submit. Yeah, we were busy. There was a lot
Oh
happening.
yeah,
There was a lot happening. But listen,
there was.
congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
How beautiful.
We did some good work.
We always do.
Yeah. I mean, we
We
are
always
sitting
do.
here in full costumes.
Full costumes.
I have headphones on top of a toque, on top of a wig, on top of a wig cap, on top of so many bobby pins, and my own head.
Yeah, I my wig and wig cap is so tight right now.
Mm,
And I also have to give this caveat, dear listeners, I have been sick AF for
yeah.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, well, 10 days at this point. Um, in the first week, I mean, the cough is so bad. I'm just apologizing in advance. You're probably going to hear me cough a few times in this episode. Nothing helps it. I've tried
Mm,
lozenges, I've tried everything. Nothing helps it. It's just like you get this feeling and it will not you
yep.
have to cough. Like it's this. Anyway, here comes one. I apologize, is my point. I'm doing the best I can. Thank God we had last week off. But then also,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it always sucks. This usually happens to you. We have a week off and you end
Oh,
up
yeah.
sick.
Oh, this is absolutely how it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
I
I'll say
mean,
it.
listen, it's a pleasure.
I'll say it. And not only that, unwell, but you still did a full look. And I'm just like a
Again,
fucking dirt bag who's going to use daddy's money to buy some Molly. And then I'm probably going to hit on some underage girls from the looks of me.
what I like again is that we've crafted these characters, these costumes to be after characters of my favorite film of all time, and
Yeah.
Joel Barish being one of my favorite characters of all time. I mean, listen, he's just
Yeah.
such a calm, even keeled. Some would call him boring man, but I think that that's one of his strengths. And what I like is that
Yeah.
you look so much like that character, and then you equally look so much like some sort of douchebag. Like it's
Yeah.
just you
Yeah.
contain multitudes.
Oh, I am so sure. Like when I look at the Zoom and I like make eye contact with myself, I'm like, oh, that dude's done coke recently. Like
Yeah,
just like there's something
he's
about
never
him.
filed his taxes for sure,
Oh no.
for sure.
No, offshore bank accounts. Like I'm never use a turn signal,
No.
always tailgating. Like I'm probably the worst. And at some point, I'm gonna have to take this wig off. Like it's
Oh,
absolutely weighing everything down. Will I keep the toucan? Maybe. It's so soft.
listen, I'm gonna be honest with you.
But
I'm madly in love with myself in this wig, and
of
I've done a
course.
lot of intricate wig work getting it so that it's as close to her hair in the movie as I could. There's a lot of pins. I might have to take this off on the break because it's just so tight. And
I
again,
get that.
I've been so sick that I've had this like headache for
Mm,
10 days. And anyway, um, enough of the complaining.
yeah,
Something very quickly before we get into the episode. I've been told that you have some sort of Halloween trivia.
I do. I
Well,
do.
what the
Remember
heck?
that episode that I kind of had a mental break and I started giving you like random facts just for
Yeah.
fun? Because because I was sad that I had to talk about Dave Grohl.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was as bleak as the rest of the year was gonna get. It's
Yeah.
fine. Um, and then I was like, well, what's more fun than regular trivia? The answer is Halloween trivia.
Mm.
So I've got some that are just random Halloween fun facts, and then I have some that are specifically pop culture. I don't know if I'm gonna get to all of it because I've got a lot.
Listen,
So,
we've got roughly 10 minutes.
oh boy, I guess gotta
I'll keep
hammer
you on a
through some of these.
schedule.
Yeah. Let I'm gonna skip that one right away because no one gives a shit. So, um, in Bathurst, New Brunswick, Canada, there is a curfew, and no one under the age of 16 is allowed to be out after 8 p.m.,
On Halloween.
specifically on Halloween. Anyone over the age of 16 that's caught trick or treating gets a $200 fine.
Wowzer.
Feels extreme. Um,
Yeah.
Anoka, Minnesota was the first city in the United States to plan a Halloween celebration. It happened in 1920, which feels insane. The original name for candy corn was chicken feed,
I can see why they changed it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't make it taste any better. Another name for a pumpkin seed is pepita,
Yeah.
which just sounds like a pet name that
Yeah.
I love a lot. 2039 is the next year when Halloween is going to have a full moon.
Oh, wow.
The last one was
15
in
years.
the last one was in 2020, which makes complete sense
Oh,
because
right.
2020 was just madness all around. Um,
Yeah.
in Hollywood, silly string is illegal on Halloween.
Really?
Apparently, according to
Huh.
multiple spots on the internet.
That seems more than possible.
The medical term for having a phobia of Halloween is Samhainophobia.
Huh.
Wow, I didn't even think a phobia of Halloween was a thing, but I mean that just feels depressing. In Belleville, Missouri, it is illegal to ask for candy on Halloween if you are over the age of 13.
See, I hate that.
Let kids be kids.
Let kid be, I don't care. Let the kids be kids. You're a teenager, you come
Yeah,
to the door, you want candy, there are worse things to be doing. I'll
a
give any
hundred
kid, I don't care if you have a
percent,
costume, I don't care.
right? Like
Stay
as
out of
long as
trouble.
you're
Come and get us some chocolate.
yes,
Yes.
as long as you're not like defacing property, egging
Yes.
someone's house, whatever. If all you're doing is going to a house asking for candy, it's like, sure,
Yeah.
right.
To me, I'm just like, that's the one of the things where I'm like, yeah, as long as there's no shenanigans, what's the problem? What's the problem?
Oh, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Oh God, let's see. A pumpkin is actually a fruit. Coming in hard with the
Are
fun
all
facts.
gourds fruits?
Well, this says, I love that I called it a fun fact. It's not. Anything that starts as a flower becomes a fruit.
That's beautiful.
I mean, it is. Yeah, yeah, it is. Oh God, what else we got? Illinois produces the most pumpkins in the United States.
No shit.
Yeah. Again, these are things I didn't know. And then this is going to lead us right into pop culture. Harry Houdini died on Halloween in 1926, but you know who was born on Halloween in 1967? Vanilla Ice.
Stop.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Lovely to meet you, Mr. Ice. That's a throwback. So we're gonna go.
I forgot.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with some pop culture Halloween. Oh, what do we got? The original title for Halloween was The Babysitter Murders.
I get that.
They made a good choice.
A much better choice, but
In a
I get
switch.
that.
In a switch. The mask that Michael Myers wears in the original Halloween movie was a William Shatner mask where they cut the eye holes bigger and spray painted it white.
Yes.
The idea for the movie Final Destination came from a spec script for the X-Files.
That makes so much sense.
Right?
That's complete. Yes, that's absolutely an X-Files episode. It could be.
Right?
Yes.
Let's see what else we got. Oh, Friday the 13th was almost called Long Night at Camp Blood.
Also not a great title.
They made a good choice.
They made a good choice.
Well, speaking of which, the original title for Beetlejuice, House Ghosts.
No.
Yeah.
House ghosts.
I would
Say
like
what you
to
see.
challenge the two of us to write a film called House Ghosts.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. And I'd like my ghost to look like this.
Well, I think what we're learning is, yeah.
Although I don't trust myself to be alone in a room with this. I said what I said.
Nobody does.
The movie Psycho, which came out in 1960, was the first movie to feature a toilet on screen.
Huh. That's interesting.
Don't know how that's really Halloween pop culture, but here we are.
Here we go.
It was a horror movie. I felt it's
Oh,
close enough.
I think it counts.
In the first Ghostbusters movie, future pop star Debbie Gibson has an uncredited role as birthday girl. She was 13.
Huh.
I do not recall. I mean, I recall them going to a birthday party because they were brought in as like
Right.
the entertainment or whatever, but I do not recall the birthday girl. I'll have to pay attention on my viewings. Um, the first horror movie nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars was The Exorcist.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
makes
sense.
sense. Drew Barrymore auditioned for a role in Poltergeist, but ended up doing E.T.
I was gonna say, I think that would be better for her mental health, but she was so young at the time, and we also know troubling childhood. So
Oh, sure.
really, yeah.
Sure. Um, Despite playing the title character Beetlejuice, Michael Keaton is only on screen for a total of 17 minutes.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the new one yet, but apparently it's the same in the new one.
I saw the new one last night, actually.
What did you think?
Yeah. Um,
Uh-oh.
no, no, no. I have some notes.
Okay.
There's stuff that I enjoyed about it. I liked some certain nods to it, like that were obvious nods to the original. Um, there was a specific storyline that I would have personally tweaked it a very specific way because I felt it would have been more emotional and for the audience.
Right.
And they made a couple of choices that I was like, no, don't do that.
Right.
They tried to live up to the original. My I'm just it was good enough. It wasn't like out of the park. It was good. It was
Right.
fine. Please don't make a third one
Mm,
because a third one will just take us to a place we don't need to go.
yeah.
Let's stop.
Yeah.
Stop while we're ahead.
Well, we're ahead.
Yeah. Um, oh God. Ooh, the quote, double, double toil and trouble originally came from Macbeth.
Right. Yes.
I, of
That's
course,
right.
wouldn't know. The original title for Michael Jackson's Thriller was Starlight.
That's interesting. I think Thriller again is a better name, but
Oh, 100%.
Starlight
All of
Starlight
these,
is better than House Ghosts.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
Starlight doesn't really have the vibe that Thriller does.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
not,
because also the
you know,
song, right? So it's like, I
yeah.
got your starlight,
Yeah.
starlight now. Doesn't, I
No,
mean, not that they would have changed the song, but you know what I'm saying.
I get what you're, yeah. Look, if I've learned anything, it's if you think you need to change a title, change it.
Yep.
That's what I'm learning today.
Yep.
Um, Film composer Danny Elfman, who is best
Uh-huh.
known for The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice, Batman, and Edward Scissorhands, was a member of the 80s band Oingo Boingo.
I don't know that I've heard of Oingo Boingo.
Oh, sure. I couldn't tell you a song, but I've
Yeah.
heard the name.
Got it.
He of course also did the theme for The Simpsons.
Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I mean, he's a
Huh.
genius.
He
I'll
is.
say it. He's a genius. R.L. Stein, known
Mhm.
for the Goosebumps books, he's written over 180. Um, the books take him about 3 weeks to write, which is wild to me. Of all the Goosebumps books, Stein says that The Haunted Mask is his favorite, and just because, why not? R.L. stands for Robert Lawrence.
I was gonna ask. You took the words out of
Well,
my mouth.
because here's the thing, I wouldn't have known. It also, I've never once in my life gone, what does that stand for? And why? Why wouldn't I ask?
I just did. I just thought, as you said
Well,
R.L. Stein, I was like, why have I never thought to ask?
I'm glad that you did. How am I doing on time?
Well, that was 10.
Okay. Okay.
But listen, we make our own rules, baby. So you do as much as you want.
Well, I mean, I assume we were done with the trivia. Um, at one point I was asked to give a list of Halloween movies.
Okay.
I'm not a a real horror type,
Sure.
but I'm getting a little better. I've been
Okay.
I've learned that I like a slasher.
Right.
Um, the psychological horror is too far for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I don't like anything like torture-y and whatever, but I love, carve 'em up, like, just stab them. Like, I love that kinda
Carve
like
them up.
yeah, that was the most horrifying thing I've ever said.
Oh,
Um, so I've come out with again, these are just personal preference. There's gonna be a lot of horror movies not on this list, because they aren't specifically horror movies. This is because it felt right for, October, 31 movies for spooky season.
fantastic.
So, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. I put them in alphabetical order because I didn't wanna show favoritism, although we already know, my
Of
favorites.
course.
But I'm gonna try and just get through them as quickly as possible.
Yep.
If you're into spooky season movies, it's worth a shot. The first 2 are The Babysitter and the sequel, The Babysitter Killer Queen. If you've never seen it, do not watch the trailer. It's full of spoilers. But if you
Uh-huh.
go into it just like, I don't know, it's a ride.
Okay.
And, I believe it's Robbie Amell.
Amel, yeah.
He is so fucking funny in that
Ah!
because that's what you're gonna find. I like a horror comedy. I need a
Right.
little comedy in there to keep me coming back. Movie 3 and 4, Beetlejuice, and then the second one because I'm too scared to say his name 3 times in a row.
Of course.
So so I just, literally someone in the movie says his name 3 times, and I literally gasped
Of course.
because I was like, "How dare you? I've been told since I was a child you don't do that."
No.
I've lost my mind. Movie 5, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Classic.
Classic. Well, speaking of which, movie 6, Clue.
My
Mystery,
favorite comedy.
comedy,
Yeah.
laugh out loud, come on. Movie 7, Escape Room, very specifically the one from 2019, followed by Escape Room Tournament of Champions. I just felt the puzzles and the rooms were very, well thought out. Escape Room, the second one wasn't as good, but, still.
Yeah.
Movie 9, Freaky. Vince
Oh, right.
Vaughn, I mean, it's a good time. M movies 10 through 13, Ghostbusters.
Of course.
And unfortunately, it pains me to say it, the lady one is not in there. I
Mm.
love those women, but I did not love that movie. There was just something about it I didn't like. So I'm talking Ghostbusters 1, 2, Afterlife, Frozen Empire. 14 and 15, Goosebumps and Goosebumps 2, Haunted Halloween. Um, then Happy Death Day and its sequel, Happy Death Day to You. Hocus Pocus, which I didn't watch a lot as a kid, and I have a lot of questions as to why they harped on a 15-year-old boy about being a virgin.
Mm.
He was, like, supposed to be, like, 15, 16-ish, I thought. I didn't even think he was driving yet, so I thought he was, like, 15. And everyone was like, "Oh my god, you're a virgin?" And I was like, "He's 15." Doing they harped on it a lot in that movie. No shade, again, it made the list, but also Hocus Pocus 2 was a delight.
Right.
So, um, no surprise, movies 20 through 25 are Scream,
Of course.
because I am who I am. 26 saw it for the first time recently, Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. That's a romp.
Yeah, again, that moment where the 2 groups of survivors see each other and they walk past each other and they're all exactly the same,
Yes.
was one of the funniest things I just didn't see coming. Movie 27, Totally Killer.
Mm.
It's got time travel. It's,
I'm writing down these
a
ones I
girl,
haven't
like,
seen.
goes back in time. Oh, it was a delight. I liked it a lot. Um, 28, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. It is just weird, but, like, it's Alan Tudyk and, Tyler Labine, I believe, and it's just if you watch it from, like, the perspective of 2 characters, it's terrifying, but if you kind of watch it from the perspective of other characters, it's the most ridiculous, stupid thing you've ever seen, and overall, I mean, I'm describing it badly, but it's again, horror comedy.
Yeah.
Number 29, Urban Legend, and only the first one.
Right.
I wanna be very clear about that. And then movies 30 and 31, Zombieland, Zombieland Double Tap.
How beautiful.
I like the Zombielands. I do.
Well, fun fact, Zombieland was directed by Ruben Fleischer, who of course was one of the original producers uh, of Superstore.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and he directed a lot of episodes of the show as well.
Oh,
Fun
well,
fact.
that's almost like what well, no, I was gonna say, does that put Superstore in the Zombieland universe? I wanna believe it does. It doesn't, but, like, I wanna believe it does.
Well, get ready. The fan fiction's gonna come.
I can't wait.
100%. Now listen, we got to get into things. That was a
Yeah.
delight, by the way. Love the fun facts. Love the list. Curated beautifully.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I
Yeah.
have to say, what you drinking over there?
Oh, I'm just, like, half a slushy deep at this point. Trying
Slushy.
to yeah. Well, it's just because it's, like, corner store Slurpee, so
Oh,
it's not,
okay.
like, actual Slurpee, it's just I mean, they would probably call it a slush puppy, I believe is the sign, but it's like when I walk in, the guy and I make eye contact, and he looks at me and goes, "Slurpee, ma'am," every time because he knows, so he calls them Slurpees.
Well,
It's just the cup doesn't say Slurpee, so I feel like
no, no, no. I like the
since I've spoken with 7-Eleven,
of course.
personally, I feel like
I've got a Kirkland Signature. That's the Costco
ooh,
brand.
I like that.
Lime sparkling water. I've got a normal water. I finished a Diet Coke, and I've got a bunch of lozenges that don't seem to be helping it whatsoever, but
Mm,
that's what's on the table. That's what's on the plate. Now, we're very excited about this episode. Obviously, this
yeah,
is the second Supernatural Uncovered episode. We did an X-Files Uncovered, we did a Supernatural Uncovered. This is Supernatural Uncovered 2. If you have no idea what we're talking about, you could go back.
yeah,
Go back in the library. Hit it up. But here's the other thing. You also don't have to, because this will stand
correct.
alone. It'll stand
It
on its own
it
two
does.
feet.
It does. The last Supernatural one we did, was Halloween last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I do remember I've seen on socials that some people have said like they've never watched until that episode of our show. And to that I say, hey CW, where's our residuals?
Well,
You know?
yeah. I mean, we've been shouting about Supernatural, from the moment a microphone got put in front of my face.
Carry on my wayward son. Um, all
Well
right.
played.
Listen, let's get
Yeah.
everybody up to speed right now. Supernatural was a hit TV series which ran from 2005 to 2020. It followed the Winchester brothers, Sam and Dean, who, as part of their family business, fought evil beings such as monsters and vengeful spirits. Sam was played by Jared Padalecki, who also played the title character in the recent series Walker, as well as Rory's worst boyfriend on Gilmore Girls. Dean was played by Jensen Ackles, an actor whose face was handcrafted by God himself. It starred in such well known roles as CJ on Dawson's Creek, Eric Brady on Days of Our Lives, and most recently, Soldier Boy on The Boys. But don't worry, this episode isn't all from Blanche's point of view. Christy will take us through 3 episodes of Supernatural, describing the storyline and the antics of the Winchester boys in each episode, before telling us about the real life inspiration behind the episode. You're getting true crime, you're getting pop culture, and you're getting 2 women wearing costumes for an audio medium. What more could you ask for?
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Um, the joke is, I mean, it's one of those like, s I'm gonna be talking about Supernatural a lot, so it feels like a jokey episode. It gets dark.
Of course. Of
So so
course.
I don't even remember what I did the first time, for episodes for that specific episode, but I don't know if we got dark, but we're gonna. And also, I wanna make it clear, I love Supernatural. I just
Of
worry
course.
some of my synopses of the episodes might seem like I don't,
Right.
but I I promise that I do. And then a disclaimer, which really brings her down, just to remind us, what we're in for. This episode will contain mentions of child abuse, suicide, and child death. So, trigger warning for those who need it. Nothing will be belabored. We'll move on, as quickly as we can. So, Supernatural was created by Eric Kripke, who is also credited with creating the TV series Revolution, Timeless, and The Boys. Fun Halloween fact, Eric, because we're on a first name basis, also wrote the screenplay for The House with a Clock in Its Walls, which is a delightful fantasy movie with a very Halloween feel. It stars the beautiful Jack Black and the even more beautiful Kate Blanchett. She's an absolute force. That face has no pores. She's just stunning.
She is.
Stunning. So the series Supernatural started on the WB, which eventually became the CW. The show starred a plethora of attractive people, including, but not limited to, Jared Padalecki, Jensen Ackles, Misha Collins, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Miss Lisa Barry. She's very intimidating in person. She doesn't mean to be. Um, and if you're looking for a Halloween type movie, because 'tis the season and 'tis the episode, that to watch this spooky season, may I suggest the movies My Bloody Valentine and Devour, because they star Jensen Ackles, or The House of Wax and the 2009 version of Friday the 13th, because they star Jared Padalecki. See what I did
Mm,
there?
yeah.
Supernatural includes 327 episodes, but today we are only focusing on three. If you've never seen the show, never fear. You will get a synopsis to help set the scene. If you're not a fan of Supernatural, don't worry. I'm dropping in some true crime throughout. There will be 6 different cases from these 3 episodes. So,
Fantastic.
first, we are going to start off with season 1, episode 7, called Hookman. It originally aired October 25th, 2005. It was written by John Scheiben, I think, directed by David Jackson. Fun fact, John Scheiben also wrote 66 episodes of The X-Files. Another fun fact, according to IMDb, this particular episode of Supernatural was one of Eric Kripke's least favorites.
Oh,
Yeah. So, interior, night. Theta sorority house at Eastern Iowa University. Lori, a college freshman with a real AJ Cook vibe, gets picked up by a carbon copy frat guy named Rich. Fun fact, the actor who played Rich was also on an episode of Gilmore Girls where he played a friend of Jared Padalecki. Halloween related fun fact, another spooky season movie for you. Final Destination 2. It stars AJ Cook and features that classic log truck scene that has forever scarred us all.
yes.
So, being the classy dude that he is, frat guy Rich parks his car under a bridge off 9 Mile Road where he immediately goes for second base. Like they're barely there. And he's just like, bam, I'm getting some boop. A dark figure in a trench coat with a hook for a hand starts scratching nearby road signs. Freaked out by the noise, Rich gets out to investigate, and while he's gone, Lori locks the car, she closes the window, and then she starts hearing this scratching noise on the roof of the car. So Lori gets out, she runs. When she turns back, she finds Rich dead, hanging upside down, his bloody fingers scraping the roof of the car. Cut to the next day. Exterior, small cafe. Sam is making phone calls searching for the elusive John Winchester, while Dean finds an article about Laurie's case online. Since it's about 100 miles from their current location, the boys decide to check it out. When they arrive, they find some guys fixing a car outside a fraternity. And this is not a key piece of information, but I have to mention it because it's the only way I can talk about it out loud. So they pull up, and there's a frat guy leaning over a car engine. He's got a screwdriver in one hand and a banana in the other hand. And I'm talking peeled banana, bite missing. And I know Supernatural was young at that point, but what were they thinking? It looked like a bad B movie. I took a screenshot and I'm putting it in our socials because it looked ridiculous to me. And I was like, why is he holding a banana? It just took me out of it. But to the important plot points. So Sam and Dean learn that Laurie's father is a pastor who's played by Bulldog from Frasier. The boys discuss the idea of the Hookman urban legend. They head to the college library where they learn about Jacob Carnes, a preacher who lost his hand in an accident and replaced it with a silver hook, which he then used to kill 13 sex workers in 1862 on the very road where Rich was murdered.
Yikes.
So the boys check out the murder scene where they are promptly arrested by local police. But don't worry, the Winchesters never stay behind bars long. After their arrest, Lori uh, goes back to her sorority, but it's really quiet. So she's like, you know what, I'm just going to sneak in, doesn't want to wake up her roommate, Taylor. But when Lori wakes up the next morning, she finds Taylor has been brutally murdered, and the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" are written in blood on the wall. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's because not only did that exact thing happen to Alicia Witt in the 1998 movie Urban Legend, but the entire idea is a popular urban legend in itself. The story goes two girls share a dorm. They have a big midterm to study for. One goes to party, the other stays home to study. The party girl gets back, walks in without turning on the lights because she doesn't want to wake her roommate. And then when the party girl wakes the next morning, she finds her roommate is dead. And then, of course, in her blood on the wall, it says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" I don't know if the legend is supposed to imply the roommate was already dead when the girl got back to the dorm, or if the roommate was killed in the dark while the other girl slept. All I know is Alicia Witt's roommate was absolutely killed while Alicia was in the room, completely oblivious, listening to her Discman while she was trying to sleep. In her defense, it sounded like her roommate was having sex, and Alicia had already been chastised by the roommate for walking in on extracurriculars. So
Mm.
we don't blame her for that. So Sam and Dean decide the next course of action is to find the unmarked grave of this hook man and then stop his spirit from killing anyone else. Dean draws the short straw and gets stuck searching for the grave at night by himself, while Sam waits outside Laurie's house to ensure that she's safe. There also may or may not have been a kiss between Sam and Laurie, which to say, I mean, I'm just going to say, keep it in your pants, Winchester. We're working. So while Sam is making out with this traumatized girl, Dean takes his perfectly crafted face to the cemetery where he finds a grave with a marking similar to a symbol that was found in Laurie's home. Am I going to always go out of my way to mention that Jansen Ackles is so stunning they broke the mold with him? I will. So Dean digs up the grave and, in a classic Winchester move, salts and burns the bones. And while that normally is enough to get rid of a spirit, the hook was missing. So the angry spirit was clearly still attached to the hook, so it was still around. The angry spirit attacks Laurie's father, who was having an affair with a married woman. Sam
Ooh.
manages to save Laurie's father, and the following day, Sam and Dean check through the records of the original Hook Man's arrest, which is amazing that somewhere kept arrest records from the 1800s. They discover the hook was donated to a church, because that makes sense, which later then gets melted down, but the records don't say what it was turned into. So just to be safe, Sam and Dean toss every silver thing they find into the fire. The boys discover Laurie's wearing a small silver locket. She says it was a church heirloom given by her father. They realize, oh God, without realizing it, Laurie's been summoning the hook man through that locket, summoning him because he would harm people she believed were acting immorally. The locket gets put in the fire, the hook man dramatically dissolves into the air, and Sam and Dean move on to the next town where they continue to do what they do best: saving people, hunting things. Ah, uh,
This is incredible.
I, I could have made that a lot shorter,
No.
but
Why?
why? Why would I? So, again, it's just the hook was so large and it got melted down and made something just so tiny. I don't, it's fine. It's fine. Again, I love the show. So the episode combined three urban legends: the "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" There was also the hook man, and the idea of the Lover's Lane killer. The Hook Man is a classic urban legend that tells the story of a man with a hook for a hand who escapes from a local institution and attacks young couples who are out at night. No one knows the official origin behind that story, but it became a popular tale in the 1950s. The basic story is a young couple parks in a location known for amorous activities
Thank you
and
very
gets
much.
murdered by a man with a hook for a hand. Although there are times when it happens, like in Supernatural, where the young man gets strung up above the car and the girl can hear scratching on the roof, thinking it's the killer. There have been a lot of pop culture references to the Hook Man, including the 1997 classic I Know What You Did Last Summer, and
Yes.
in the 1981 short story collection by Alvin Schwartz, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. They also did make that a movie recently. The Hookman legend is often combined with the Lover's Lane killer, where an amorous young couple is murdered by a madman stalker. To paraphrase Sarah Michelle Gellar from I Know What You Did Last Summer, basically, the theory goes the legends were created to simply scare teenagers into abstaining from sex, which, makes sense. But since then, sadly, there have been multiple people who tried to make these legends a reality. Just to give you an idea, I have three separate cases for you. The first in Texarkana, Texas, in 1946.
Oh,
On February 22nd, 25-year-old Jimmy Hollis and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Mary Jean Larry, were parked on a secluded road around 11:45 p.m. A man in a white cloth mask, which was described as a pillowcase with eye holes cut out, which sounds horrifying, walks up to the driver's side door and points a gun at the couple. He ordered them out of the car, where, for whatever reason, he told Jimmy to remove his pants. When Jimmy did, the man hit Jimmy in the head with a gun so hard that Mary thought Jimmy had been shot because the sound was so loud. In reality, and this is brutal, the sound that Mary heard was actually the sound of Jimmy's skull fracturing. He got
oh
hit
my
so hard.
God.
The man then hit Mary in the head and told her to run. The attacker caught up with her, hit her again, and again told her to run. This time she made it to a nearby house where the police were called. Both Mary and Jimmy were hospitalized and managed to survive.
Wow.
Yeah. About a month later, on March 24th, 29-year-old Richard Griffin and his 17-year-old girlfriend, Polly Moore, were not comfortable with that, but they're victims, so we're letting it go for now.
Yeah.
They were both found dead in his car on Lover's Lane. Since a pool of blood was found on the grass near the car, police believe both victims had been killed outside the vehicle and then placed in the car. Weeks later, on April 14th, the body of 17-year-old Paul Martin was found on the edge of a secluded road. He'd been shot 4 times. 5 hours later, the body of Paul's 15-year-old girlfriend, Betty Jo Booker, was discovered about 2 miles away. She'd been shot twice, including once in the face. Her body was then posed so that she had one hand in her coat pocket. Paul's car was found about a mile and a half from his body and about 3 miles from Betty's. The bullets from the scenes were determined to be from a .32 Colt pistol, but the weapon was never found. Since it was the same weapon and a similar MO, police believe the three attacks were committed by the same person, who they nicknamed the Phantom Killer. More than 200 people were questioned, and while there were multiple possible suspects, the most promising was a 29-year-old named Ewell Swinney, who was arrested for stealing a car around the time of the first attack. Ewell's wife, Peggy, claimed Ewell had confessed to being the Phantom Killer, but Peggy's story constantly changed, and when she refused to testify against him, the entire case fell apart. The FBI recently released more than 1,100 pages from their investigation, including a full handprint belonging to the perp. But as of this record, the Phantom Killer was never found and no one was ever charged. for any of those attacks.
That's wild.
A similar case happened in Augusta, Georgia in 1971. In January, a police officer was patrolling an area known as Lover's Lane when he discovered 27-year-old Mary Payne sitting next to a vehicle. She had been shot in the back, but she was alive. Mary said that she and her 22-year-old husband, Joseph Grant, had been parked in their vehicle 5 hours earlier when another vehicle drove up beside them. 4 men got out of the car and started shooting at them. Joseph begged them to stop. One of the men said, "Kill them," and the other 3 just continued to fire. Mary managed to get out of the car before being shot in the back. The shot was so close to her spine that she was unable to move. Joseph got out of the car and ran, but was followed by the armed men. His body was later found on a set of railroad tracks. As of this record, those 4 men have never been identified.
Wow.
Then 6 years later in Atlanta, which is about 145 miles west of Augusta, 3 couples were gunned down in the span of 10 weeks. On January 16, 1977, 26-year-old LaBryan Lovett and 25-year-old Veronica Hill were each shot multiple times in their vehicle while parked near Adams Park, a notorious makeout spot. The couple were both alive when they were found. They were rushed to a hospital where they died from their injuries. A month later, on February 12th, 18-year-old Dennis Langston and 17-year-old Deatira Tatum were having sex in a parked car in West Manor Park when an unknown man approached the vehicle and fired 6 shots. Both teenagers managed to survive. They said they only got a brief look at the shooter, who they described as a tall black man. The bullets from the scene were a match to the attack that occurred 1 month prior. A month later, on March 12th, 20-year-old Diane Collins and her fiancé were parked in Adams Park. The shooter fired 6 shots into their vehicle, and Diane was killed instantly. Her fiancé was shot in the head, but managed to survive. Weeks
Oof.
later, police finally admitted publicly that those 3 shootings were committed by the same person. Is it possible that one or multiple men from the Augusta shooting in 1971 were involved in these shootings? Absolutely. But as of this record, this killer was never found, and that case remains unsolved.
Wow.
Now we're on to our second supernatural episode of the
Please.
day. Season 1, Episode 15, The Benders. It originally aired February 14th, 2006, and was written by John Shiban and directed by Peter Ellis. Interior, night, Hibbing, Minnesota. A young boy sits in bed watching a scary movie. When he hears a noise outside, he goes to the window and sees his neighbor, Alvin Jenkins, throwing garbage in the back alley. A loud, whining growl is heard before Alvin is dragged underneath a vehicle and disappears.
Whoa.
That's the most dramatic I've ever been. Yeah, my
It was
husband would say
beautiful. Very
otherwise.
spooky
Thank you.
story.
Thank you.
I loved it.
A week later, Sam and Dean arrive at the boy's house posing as state police officers. The kid tells them what he saw that night, but his mother says he just has an overactive imagination. The Winchesters can't decide if this case involves a monster or if it's simply a missing persons case and not their stuff. They stick around, they get a couple of beers at a local bar. They decide they'll go to a motel. Sam heads to the car while Dean makes a quick bathroom stop. But when Dean gets to the parking lot, Sam is gone.
Oh my God.
There is, however, an old van that likely has a timing belt issue because it's making a whining growl sound. I'm not a mechanic. Dean goes to the local police claiming to be an out-of-state officer, explaining that Sam is missing and he needs to see security camera footage from the highway outside the bar. On the footage, they see an old truck camper with brand new plates, which is apparently, according to them, a good sign that the vehicle is stolen. Cut to interior. Sam wakes in a cage made of rebar. Next to him is another cage with an unconscious man who turns out to be Alvin Jenkins. An unknown person enters the room, puts food near the cages, and leaves. Sam realizes that the monster in this episode is human.
Oh, God.
In fact, it's a family of humans who kidnap men only to set them free in the woods and hunt them for sport. Dean and the local cop arrive to a nearby farm looking for that camper truck. The cop realizes Dean lied about his identity. When they get to the farmhouse and see that truck, the cop handcuffs Dean to the door of her police cruiser and goes to check out the house herself. The family catch the cop and put her in a cage next to Sam. But since Dean Winchester is a motherfucking rock star, he uses the car's antenna to pick the lock of the cuffs and he comes in to save the day. In the house, he finds jars of human teeth and Polaroids of the family members posing with victims like some sort of hunting trophies. The youngest in the family gets the drop on Dean and he gets tied up. There's a big fight scene. The four weirdo family members on one side, the cop and the Winchesters on the other. There's a lot of stabbing and punching, yada yada, until, as always, the good guys are victorious. The cop calls in for reinforcements, but lets the Winchesters go. Sam and Dean walk back to town and on to their next battle. I'm ridiculous.
I
So,
love it.
the family in this episode was inspired by the real life Bender family who wreaked havoc in Kansas in the 1870s. The Benders consisted of Ma and Pa, whose real names were unknown, but some people believe Pa's name was John, but I'm not going to bother because that will get confusing.
Yeah.
There's also their daughter Kate and Kate's common law spouse John. So you'll see why that would have been
Yes.
confusing. So together, the Ma, Pa, Kate, and John ran a roadside inn in Labette County, Kansas. And by inn, I mean like a modest one-room cabin that had just a large canvas sheet running down the center of the building to give the illusion of privacy. It is believed the Benders opened the inn with the intention of robbing people, and that their first kill may have occurred during a robbery gone wrong. And then when no one came looking for the victim, they just decided it was easier to kill the people instead of just rob them.
Wow.
Several people had gone missing in that area. All were last seen headed towards the inn, but no one seemed to care about the missing until William York went missing in March 1873. His brother, Alexander, was some sort of fancy Kansas politician who made a hell of a lot of noise about his brother being missing, as well he should have. The police then finally noticed a pattern of people going missing around the Benders' property. So finally, they were suspicious, but before the Benders could get caught, they skipped town. When the authorities arrived at the inn, they discovered multiple decomposing bodies in the crawl space under the building, as well as more buried in the orchard outside, and another 3 buried in a nearby field. In total, authorities found 11 bodies, all with the signs of blunt force trauma to their heads and the base of their necks. There were also signs that many of them had their throats cut. All
Jesus.
the victims were men, except for one young woman who had been traveling with her father. Most of the victims were never identified. It is believed the murders took place between 1870 and 1873. Authorities believe there could be as many as 20 victims.
Right.
The murders became such a fascination that special trains were commandeered to bring tourists to visit the crime scene, where they would literally rip pieces off of the cabin for souvenirs. I, yeah.
Wow.
So I guess true crime's always been a thing.
I guess
Like always
so.
been a popular thing.
Good point.
There were claims that Ma and Pa were seen in Missouri and John and Kate were seen in Texas, but nothing was ever substantiated, and it seems like authorities just didn't bother to pursue any potential leads. In August 1880, two people claiming to be Ma and Pa Bender were arrested in Nebraska, where they gave a full confession, but the details were really incorrect. So it was believed those people were not the Benders at all. In 1887, 13 years after the family was last seen, two women named Elmira Monroe and Sarah Davis were accused of being Ma and Kate Bender. The women were arrested, and at a pretrial hearing, 7 of the 16 witnesses were absolutely positive that those women were, in fact, the Benders. But since no photos of the Benders existed, police couldn't tell for sure. Then it was revealed at the time of the Bender murders, Elmira had been in prison. So obviously she couldn't have been Ma. Um, and she was Sarah's mother. So then Sarah couldn't have been Kate. So they were both released. As of this record, no one knows what happened to the real Bender family.
Wow.
If I had to guess, they went off and killed other people.
Probably.
I don't believe they would have stopped. There was a second family of serial killers near Kansas that some people believed might have been the Benders, incognito. The Kelly family included William, his wife Kate, their son Bill, and their daughter Kit. Now, Bill and Kit were 20 and 18, respectively, in 1889. So it means they were far too young to have been John and Kate Bender. So the idea that the Kelly family and the Bender family were the same doesn't work out. But the families were just so eerily similar. Not only did they both involve an older couple and two adult children, but both families killed random strangers together. The Kelly family had a tavern set up in the middle of nowhere in Oak City, which was just south of the Kansas border. It was like a kind of way station for travelers. But as with the people in the Benders area, travelers just started to go missing.
Mm-hmm.
The Kelly family suddenly packed up and left in late December 1887. Shortly after, a traveler from St. Louis stopped by the tavern and he noticed a horrific smell coming from the cellar. Inside were the bodies of 3 men in various states of decomposition. When authorities arrived, they found a broken human skull buried in the barn, as well as at least 7 other bodies, 2 of which were female. Again, most of the victims never identified. It is believed that the Kelly family murdered at least 11 people with an axe, which was found in the barn with bits of human flesh on the blade. A group of 20 men formed a posse and chased after the Kellys, which was apparently fairly easy to do because one of the Kellys' horses was shoed improperly, so it left a very distinct track. As they were leaving, when the vigilantes closed in, Kate Kelly's horse tripped, throwing Kate to the ground, breaking her neck, killing her instantly. Days later, January 4th, 1888, the posse finally catches up with the rest of the family. William denied any involvement in the murders, even though he was carrying a watch that was engraved with one of the victims' names on it. The posse hung William for just a few moments, then lowered him to the ground and gave him a chance to confess. He did confess. He said all 4 members of his family participated in each of the murders. William, Bill, and Kit were then hanged from a tree. The number of victims of the Kelly family is still unknown to this
Wow.
day. Yeah. And now, the final episode of the day. Season 2, Episode 6. No Exit.
Ooh.
It originally aired November 2nd, 2006, and was written by Matt Whitten. The episode was directed by Kim Manners, who, for our interests, also directed 51 episodes of The X-Files, 1 episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and 7 episodes of The Commish.
Ah!
Shout out Kai Eric Erickson. Interior, night. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Go Flyers. A young blonde woman is on the phone with her landlord, complaining about the flickering lights in her apartment. As she demands the landlord come deal with it, black goo starts to drip from the ceiling and ooze out of a light switch that has no cover. When the woman takes a closer look at a light switch, a man's face appears inside the wall. The woman screams and disappears. Interior, day. Sam and Dean are at the roadhouse run by Ellen, who is not only a friend of their father's, but is also tough as nails and has a Kathleen Turner vibe. Ellen's adult daughter Jo tells the boys about an apartment building in Philly where young blonde women go missing every 10 years. Jo wants to investigate the case herself, as her father was a hunter, but Ellen refuses because hunting is what got the father killed. Sam and Dean head to Philadelphia where they check out the missing girl's apartment. Inside, they find the same black goo, which, according to the Winchesters, is ectoplasm. So we are talking classic Ghostbuster level shit here. According to Sam, ectoplasm is created by an incredibly angry spirit. Jo shows up at the apartment and, against Ellen's wishes, inserts herself into the Winchesters' investigation. As they search the building, they notice a very distinct smell coming from the vents, but they can't place what it is. When another girl in the building is taken, Sam and Dean learn that years prior, there was a prison next door, and when the prisoners were hanged, they were buried in a field, which is now the site of that apartment building. They decide to narrow down who the potential vengeful spirit might be, and they read through the list of prisoners who were put to their death years prior. Sam notices the name Herman Webster Mudgett, which happens to be the real name of H. Holmes, one of the first serial killers in America. According to Sam, Holmes had a tendency to go after young blonde women and would use chloroform to incapacitate them, um, which works for this episode, but isn't 100% accurate, historically speaking. Um, Dean realizes chloroform was the smell that was coming from the vents earlier. So at this point, they believe they're dealing with the ghost of H. Holmes, so the next move would be to salt and burn the bones. But that would be very difficult in this case because Holmes requested to be buried in concrete because he didn't want people messing with his corpse,
Ah,
which is a true story. We'll get to it. Sam then points out that H. Holmes had a building where he would hide and torture people within the walls. So they start investigating inside the walls of the apartment building. Jo, who happens to be a young blonde woman, Holmes' supposed victim preference, heads down an air duct. She's the only one small enough to fit. She stays in contact with Dean on the phone when she tells him she found ectoplasm oozing through the walls. Suddenly, Jo screams, and the call ends.
oh no.
Ever the hero, Dean uses an axe to break through a wall to get to Jo, but he can't find her. An undetermined amount of time later, Jo wakes up in a wooden box next to another girl in a wooden box, very similar to what happened to Sam in that Bender episode. Sam and Dean find an underground entrance to the secret basement dungeon where the spirit is holding Jo and the other girl. There's a lot of nonsense. The boys cleverly trap the spirit in a salt circle, destroying him. And then, I mean, it's just what the Winchesters do best. Before they leave town, they fill the underground entrance with cement. When the boys take Jo back to the roadhouse, there's a lot of drama with Ellen, including a shocking reveal about John Winchester. But unless you're a fan of the show, that will mean nothing to you. Plus, we have a case to get to. So for once in my life, I'm skipping the tea.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't have time. We
I
don't
love
have
it.
time. So, Herman Webster Mudgett was born May 16th, 1861, to an affluent family in New Hampshire. He would later go by the name H. Holmes, so to spare any confusion, I'm just going to call him Holmes. Although in this specific outfit, it looks like I call people Holmes on a regular basis,
It does.
but I did not plan that out when I, wrote this. How would I know? So Holmes was the third of five children, and it was said that their parents were both mentally and physically abusive, especially towards Holmes. His father often deprived him food and forced him into isolation as a form of punishment. It was also said that when the children would cry, their father would quiet them by covering their mouths with rags soaked in kerosene.
Mm,
Holmes was also bullied at school, like when some of his classmates forced him into a doctor's office and placed the model skeleton's hands on Holmes' face because Holmes was known to fear the skeleton, which, in the 1870s, that wouldn't have been a model. It would have been the real thing.
yeah,
Just, thought. Holmes later claimed that this event gave him an interest in anatomy, so he started experimenting on animals in the woods.
of course.
It started with reptiles, moved on to rabbits and dogs. Some also believed that this morbid obsession led to Holmes killing a friend when he was just a child. Holmes and his friend Tom were exploring an abandoned house when Tom fell off a landing. It was considered an accident, but there is speculation that Holmes, who was just 11 at the time, pushed Tom to his death. In 1878, when Holmes was just 17, he married 17-year-old Clara Lovering, the daughter of a wealthy farmer. And before you think, oh, young love, it seems more likely that Holmes was just after Clara's money. A year after they got married, Holmes graduated from high school, enrolled at the University of Michigan Medical School, and then used money from Clara's family to pay for it, absolutely leaving Clara behind. And before I get too deep into this, we need to stop for a quick Holmes was a terrible husband side note. Now, this will skip a bit ahead in our story, but there is just not a better place for me to mention this. So, Holmes married Clara in 1878. 2 years later, Clara gives birth to a son, Robert. And while the couple remained legally married until Holmes' death 21 years later, during that time frame, he also married two other women.
Oh, wow.
In 1886, Holmes married Myrta Belknap. She gave birth to their daughter Lucy in 1889. And then in 1894, Holmes married Georgiana Yoke. At the time of his death, Holmes was married to three women. None of them knew about each other, and all thought they were genuinely married to him. So he abandoned three wives and two children. So that's something.
Yeah.
And if that's not weird enough, at his third wedding, one of the witnesses was Holmes's mistress, who would later become one of his victims.
Oh.
So, not just a murderer, full-on creep as well. Of the wives, only Clara would later remarry.
Oof.
So back to Holmes in med school, where he would steal bodies to dissect them on his own before then selling the bodies to other medical schools. And when he couldn't steal the cadavers at school, he'd just, rob graves and morgues,
Of course.
as you do. Sometimes he'd even use the bodies to commit insurance fraud. He'd take out a policy on himself under a fake name, then take a body, disfigure it beyond recognition, and cash in on the insurance policy claiming that body belonged to that fake name. Holmes graduated med school in 1884, and the following year he moved to Chicago, where he started working at a pharmacy under the alias Henry Howard Holmes, aka H. Holmes. In 1887, Holmes bought an empty lot across the street from the pharmacy and began construction on a three-story building. It stretched the entire block. The main floor had multiple storefronts that he rented to local businesses. In one spot, he opened his own jewelry store. He hired a man named Ned Connor to run the jewelry store. Ned, his wife, and their daughter came to live in the building upstairs. So Holmes hired Ned's wife, Julia, as his assistant at the pharmacy. Rumor has it that Holmes and Julia started an affair, and when Ned found out, he left town. Julia and her 7-year-old daughter, Pearl, stayed behind. They were last seen in 1892.
Oh boy.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, this massive building, the main floor has businesses. The third floor um, was split into 35 bedrooms. The second floor and the basement were an absolute horror show. There was an operating room, a mortuary, a torture chamber. There were hidden stairways, false walls, sliding panels, fake hallways that went nowhere, an open, empty elevator shaft, trapdoors with metal chutes that led to the basement. The entire thing was a carefully constructed maze which would trap any unsuspecting person who may find themselves inside. There were secret chambers under the floorboards that were called asphyxiation rooms,
Oh,
and iron plates lining the walls to stifle sound. During construction, Holmes allegedly switched architects and builders multiple times so no one but him would have the exact layout of the entire building.
that's diabolically intelligent.
Yeah. The building was completed in 1892 and came to be known as Murder Castle.
Jesus.
The rumor was that Holmes would advertise for a secretary, woo the applicants, promise to marry them, and after they signed over their life savings to him, he would chloroform them while they slept and throw their body down the open elevator shaft to the basement. And while there's no proof that ever happened, it is said he would often sell skeletons to medical schools, which is a pretty ingenious way to hide a body. Patrick Quinlan was the caretaker of the building, and when a fire broke out in September 1893, there was a belief that Quinlan had started the blaze intentionally to cover some of Holmes's crimes.
Mm.
When investigators checked the building after the fire was out, they discovered bones. But Holmes told them, "Oh, those are just animal bones left over from the restaurant that used to be here when the World's Fair was here." He claimed that the various chutes that were found in the building were just used to transport pounds of beef, for that restaurant that didn't ever exist. But somehow investigators were like, huh, that absolutely makes sense. Thank you very much. Case closed. They let it go. But
Classic.
Holmes didn't like, yeah, it's good to know cops have been doing this for
Yeah.
centuries. Um, But Holmes didn't like how close they got. He got a little nervous, so he decided to leave town with his new business partner, Benjamin Peitzel. I am not sure how to pronounce that last name. I've heard Peitzel, I've heard Pitzel. I don't know. The internet gave many conflicting options. I'm just running with Peitzel. It is what it is. So when I say business partner, I really mean that Holmes and Benjamin ran just so many insurance fraud schemes together. Um, Holmes was obviously not new to insurance fraud. He applied for life insurance in September 1893, claiming both of his parents were dead. They were absolutely alive. I assume he did that to prevent his parents from becoming the beneficiaries if he tried to cash in on his own policy, is all I can think. And just like his insurance schemes in university, Holmes and Benjamin would get life insurance policies for a fictional person. Then they'd produce a cadaver matching that person's description, collect the insurance money. There they go. They ran that scheme in Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, Missouri, Colorado, New York, and even Canada. During their time in Missouri, Holmes was caught red-handed committing fraud and briefly put in jail. While there, he met an inmate named Marion Hedgepath who agreed to join the insurance scheme that Holmes and Benjamin were running. Marion was a train robber who was only brought into the scheme because Holmes couldn't keep his mouth shut. And he kept bragging about this insurance scheme and how their next plan was to fake Benjamin's death and collect $10,000 which is equivalent to about 350,000 in 2024. However, Holmes was greedy and decided he didn't want to split that money with anyone. So in September 1894, he outright killed Benjamin and denied Marion his cut of the insurance money. Investigators believe that Holmes got Benjamin drunk, asphyxiated him with chloroform after he passed out, then burned his face to make it look like Benjamin died in a lab explosion.
Jesus.
Chloroform was found in his digestive system, but the scene was too neat and tidy for an explosion, so investigators were very suspicious. Benjamin was 38 at the time of his death, and he left behind a wife and 5 children. At the time, the oldest and youngest children, who were 16 years and 10 months respectively, were living at home with their mother, while the middle 3 children were staying with their father while he schemed with Holmes in Toronto, Ontario. So, to further cover his tracks, Holmes killed the 3 children, which included 15-year-old Alice, 11-year-old Nellie, and 8-year-old Howard. Authorities say that Holmes gassed the 2 girls in a trunk and buried their bodies in the cellar of a house that Holmes and Benjamin had rented in Toronto. It's unsure exactly what happened to Howard, but some of his charred remains, including his skull, were found in a stove in a cottage in Indianapolis.
Good Lord.
Benjamin's wife, Carrie, knew about the scheme to fake Benjamin's death, so she had no idea that Holmes had actually murdered most of her family. In fact, at this point, only Holmes and Marion knew that Holmes had murdered anyone at all. But the insurance company was starting to catch on to this guy who just keeps putting through policies. So they hire a private detective to track Holmes down. And they discover he gets found at a boarding house in Boston in November 1894. He gets arrested for defrauding an insurance company. At the time, there was an outstanding warrant for Holmes' arrest for stealing a horse in Texas. But Holmes was so scared of going back to Texas, he quickly pleaded guilty to the fraud charges, thinking it's going to be short. I'll get out of here quickly, then I won't get sent to Texas. And that all might have been true if it wasn't for Marion, who was still really pissed that Holmes had backed out of the deal to share Benjamin Peitzel's life insurance money. So Marion goes to the police and tells them, well, Holmes not only confessed to all of these insurance schemes, he also confessed to killing Benjamin. So the police contact Benjamin's wife, Carrie, and she's like, yeah, I knew about the scheme to defraud the company, but I thought my husband only faked his death. I didn't think my husband was actually dead. So Holmes is still in prison at this point. So police are like, well, we're going to go search that place everyone calls the murder castle. They discover 2 people under the floorboards. It was impossible to determine the identity of the victims, but since one was the size of a child, police believe the victims were 32-year-old Julia Connor and her 7-year-old daughter Pearl, who had not been seen since 1892. It was suggested that Holmes was also responsible for the disappearances of Holmes' former secretary, 24-year-old Emmeline Sigrand, and the Williams sisters, 26-year-old Minnie and 18-year-old Nanny, who were last seen June 1893. Nanny's garter buckle and Minnie's watch chain were discovered in one of the ovens at the murder castle. None of their remains were ever found. It is believed that Holmes may have sold their bodies to medical schools. Holmes did admit that both Emmeline and Julia Connor were dead, but he claimed they died undergoing illegal abortions.
Oh,
So it's not
sure.
his fault. Despite the remains being found and the speculation of more that had yet to be found, Holmes was only put on trial for the murder of Benjamin Peitzel. Holmes denied any involvement in the death, saying, quote, For months, I have been vilified by the public press, held up to the world as the most atrocious criminal of the age, directly and indirectly accused of murder of at least a score of victims, many of whom have been my closest personal friends. The trial started October 28th, 1895. Holmes refused a lawyer and chose to represent himself, which, historically speaking, is not a great idea when it's a murder trial. Patrick Quinlan, the caretaker of the murder castle, testified against Holmes, saying he knew that Holmes was stealing bodies from graveyards and selling them to medical schools, but both Patrick and his wife testified they knew about the scheme, but they were not involved in any way. Less than a week after the trial started, we're talking like 5, 6 days, Holmes was found guilty and given a death sentence. So yeah, I don't know, maybe representing yourself, the choice.
Not the move.
Yeah, not the move. Holmes suggested that he was turning into the devil, saying that his face was starting to look more demonic. Um, I don't know if the insanity plea was a thing at that point. I don't know if that's what he was going for, or maybe his level of evil was genuinely coming to the surface. He said, quote, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than a poet can help the inspiration to sing." Which also doesn't make sense. But after his sentence, Holmes requested that for his burial, his coffin be encased in concrete and buried 10 feet deep. Why? Because he didn't want grave robbers mutilating his body, which is fascinating that he didn't want people to do to him what he had done to so many others. Holmes was hanged May 7th, 1896. His neck didn't break like it traditionally does when that happens. So it took about 20 minutes for him to die.
Oh boy.
H. Holmes was 34 at the time of his death. And while his burial request was unusual, it was granted and his coffin was encased in concrete. This, of course, led to the conspiracy theory that Holmes escaped prison and wasn't really dead. The theory continued until 2017 when his grave was officially exhumed. Using samples from his descendants, it was determined the remains in the grave did in fact belong to H. Holmes. In March 1914, 18 years after Holmes died, Patrick Quinlan, the caretaker of the murder castle, took his own life by drinking a bottle of pesticide. He left behind a note that simply read, quote, "I could not sleep."
Oh,
I can't imagine what he actually witnessed in
yeah.
that building. Patrick was 59 years old. The murder castle was eventually torn down and a post office was built in its place in 1938. That post office remains there to this day. At one point, Herman Webster Mudgett, also known as H. Holmes and also known as the Beast of Chicago, confessed to 27 murders. However, it was discovered that some of the victims he named were not victims at all because they were absolutely still alive. So he just continued to play games with everybody.
Right.
9 victims. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. We are never going to know how many people he officially killed. A rumor started in the 1940s that the number of victims could be as high as 200, which seems unlikely. But if he was selling the bodies to medical school, I mean, the number of victims could be incredibly high. We
Yeah.
don't know. 9 victims have been officially confirmed. That includes Benjamin Peitzel, the 3 Peitzel children, Julia and Pearl Connor, Emmeline Sigrand, and the sisters Minnie and Nanny Williams. I believe Minnie Williams was the woman he was having a relationship with who was a witness at his 3rd wedding, as far as I can remember. Prior to Holmes' death, attorneys in Toronto were in the process of having Holmes extradited to Canada to face charges for the deaths of the 3 Peitzel children. But no matter how many people he killed, he was only ever charged and convicted of 1. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Wow, what a gift. I have so much to talk about. Let's hit the can, grab a drink, and we'll be back to discuss Supernatural Uncovered 2 on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. On three. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Supernatural Uncovered 2. So many things.
Yeah.
So many things. Okay, you're going to love the first thing that I have to talk about. You talked in Hookman that one of the actors had a banana in his hand with a bite taken out of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to give you some insider information.
Peace.
So there's only 2 reasons why that would have happened, maybe 3. One, it had to have been written into the script. 2, an actor decides they have an affectation for some reason. It's a character choice.
Yeah.
The third could be a directorial choice, but I would say that this most often, when it's that bizarre a choice, it's probably because it's specifically said in the script, or an actor got a bee in their bonnet. Here is what I will give you as context.
Yeah.
Was he eating the banana? Do you see him
No.
chew the banana?
You do not.
Right. Because they probably didn't have bananas. So this suggests to me that this was a character choice. Because if something's written into the script, there are so many conversations that happen ahead of time. For example,
Sure.
on any TV show I've done, let's say there's a scene where it's like my character has to eat something. That is conversations have to happen ahead of time. They contact the actor. They make sure the actor is okay with it. If there's like a gray area, like it's like eating cereal, then they want to know what your preference is, that kind of thing.
Sure. Because you have to
Right?
do it over and over and over again.
Over and over and over again. They also have to make sure that they have enough of whatever it is that's in the script. So if there's a banana that you're taking a bite out of, they're going to have dozens and dozens of bananas on standby.
Of course.
That's the job.
Yeah.
So if he's standing with a banana in his hand that has a bite out of it,
Yeah.
my thought is, and I'm speculating, but this is based on, decades of experience. I would speculate that this is an actor that thought for some reason that would be like a cool character choice. And he got it from like craft services himself. And then they were like, well, wait a second. Is he biting the banana? Then the script coordinator is going to get involved. What hand is the banana in? At what point is the bite taken? How many bananas do we have? We don't have any more bananas. Well, you can't take a bite of it then.
Yeah.
I just feel like, yeah, that's really
like this is
interesting.
how he's first seen, is just the screwdriver in the car and just the banana.
And also, he's holding that screwdriver like he's never used one.
Correct, but he's holding that banana like he absolutely eats.
Again, I would just offer that, yeah, if it stands out to you as being weird, that's because it is. And I would say my gut is telling me that was an actor choice that absolutely didn't need to happen. Now, we were talking about urban legends, and one of the ones you talked about was, of course, the one where it's like, aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?
Yeah.
Now, you stated, and I'm not questioning that you were wrong. I think you're right, that urban legends began to discourage teens from having sex. But my question is, what is it about that story that's going to discourage teens from having sex? The one who died was the roommate that stayed home to study. To me, the moral of that story is go out and party because you might get murdered if you stay home.
Short. Yes.
Right.
Oh, 100%. That one makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like, they made, I was meaning more the Hookman Lover's Lane ones where it's like, if you're going to fuck in a car, a crazy man's going to kill you. Kind of like, that's kind of how it seems. But it feels like with the light one, it just feels so unfair. Where it's like the one who's like, I'm going to stay back, I'm going to study, whatever. It almost feels very like, don't be a nerd. Like it's almost like they were like all these urban legends, like scaring you into trying to be a goody two shoes or whatever. And so it's like someone was like, let's make one that goes the other way.
Totally.
Because it just feels like, how unfair. The girl that like stuck around is doing what she's supposed to do. She gets brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Get out. That's unfair.
Get out of town. I really enjoyed in the Benders, you said, then there's a lot of stabbing and punching, which does feel like many episodes of Supernatural. I get that. I need
Yeah.
you to know anytime you said John and Kate, my brain would go +8
+8.
every
Yeah.
time.
I stopped
Now,
myself at a moment where I was like, someone found John and Kate, and I was like, don't. And I was like,
yeah,
just keep, yeah, yeah, I
keep
get
going.
it.
Now, the theory that perhaps these two families were the same, the fact that there's a Kate in both, my question
Right?
is, did Kate kick John to the curb? Is William her new husband and Bill and Kit her kids, like, is it the same Kate? Like, was the daughter from the original family the mother in the second family?
There would not have been enough time for her to birth a 20-year-old. So unless she was like a step parent coming in.
Okay.
So maybe. I'm not saying no, because
I
I don't
just
like
thought the
to say no
name
to you.
being the same, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah, it's what are the odds of two families
yeah.
within like the same state killing together and both have a Kate?
Also, John could have just changed his name to William. Maybe his name was William John. We don't know,
Very true.
right? And then yeah, what if these quote kids, why
Weren't
am I still doing this quotation
I?
mark for so long?
I like
What
it a
if they
lot.
were just what if they were like, home unhoused kids that these two picked up and said, "Oh, just pretend to be our kids or something," you know?
More than possible.
I'm really stretching. And then the fact that Kate also died so unceremoniously, like getting thrown from her horse,
Right?
wild. The fact that then the vigilantes tracked down the rest of the family, I simply wrote, looks like the hunters became the hunted. See you never.
They did.
See you bye.
But accurate. Absolutely accurate.
Thank you. All right, we're into No Exit. We're into No Exit. This whole story is so fascinating and so chilling, and I don't feel like I ever knew the real story of H. H. Holmes. It's a name you hear a lot
It
in the true
is.
crime
It
world.
is.
But I feel like I don't really feel like I knew the details of the story. I mean, yeah, the idea that it's like he had this childhood where a rag soaked with kerosene was put in his mouth and then he would use a similar methodology to essentially incapacitate these victims feels chilling.
Yep.
The fact that he had this bullying situation with a skeleton and then became obsessed with human anatomy, dissecting bodies, et cetera, chilling.
Yeah.
Um, I think also it's the same story we hear so often. He got sloppy. If he hadn't ran his mouth and gotten Marion involved, he could have potentially gotten away with all of this. Not with the
Oh yeah.
fraud, but he could have potentially gotten away with the murders. The fact that
100%.
the house was called the Murder Castle, my God. Um, I also find it very interesting that Patrick Quinlan waited so long to take his own life. I mean, I understand that these things just, I guess, haunted him for that amount of time. It's just interesting to me that it was like, such an amount of time.
Yeah.
The detail that the murder castle was torn down and replaced with a post office that's still there feels, I think also because there's, I am not putting any um, weight behind this, but of course there's the idea of like a disgruntled postal worker.
Sure.
My question is, was there some sort of postal worker that did get violent in that location? Was it because of the bad vibes? Was it because of the murder castle originally being there?
Oh, the moment I find out that used to be on that property, it's like, well, I guess I'm finding a new post office. Like I'm not
Yeah.
going to be able to go in that building.
No, I don't want my letters being haunted. We're
No.
trying
Oh
to send
God,
a
I hadn't even thought
package,
of that.
not an apparition. I guess, what was it again? House ghosts? Post ghosts.
House Post ghosts.
Come on.
Okay, I'd watch that. As it
Listen,
is,
who
I just
wouldn't?
learned today about a new paranormal romance. Girl haunts boy. I'm gonna
Well,
need to see it immediately.
listen. Listen, those are all my thoughts. I mean, I was riveted this entire time. I just felt like, as always, fantastic research. As always, beautifully laid out. I mean, we truly, I'll say it because it's a Halloween episode. 13 out of 10.
Oh, thank you. I like
You're
that a lot.
welcome.
I also want to say the synopsis at the beginning that I make you read out loud. Um the first time I wrote it at the end when I was like, you're getting true crime, you're getting pop culture, whatever. And it was I decided I was going to end it with God, I shouldn't say this, it's horrifying. What does Christy Oxborrow have in store for us? I don't know, but I bet it's scary good. And then I was like, no, 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 I don't like that. And then I was like, what does Christy Oxborrow have in store for us? I don't know, but I bet it'll be a scream. That was going to be it. And I was like, this is it. And then I was like, stop it. You're a moron. And I changed it.
Never underwrite those synopses. Never underwrite them. If ever
Yeah.
you get that kind of instinct, I want you to follow it.
Yeah. Look, I thought that I took too many liberties with handcrafted by God himself.
Oh,
Well,
never. Liver. And also, when you say liberty, all I hear is liberty, 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 because my brain is full of nothing but jingles and songs that get triggered by every word another human says. But that's my
I get
cross to
that.
bear. Um, Listen, thank you for your work. We don't deserve you.
Oh, this was an absolute delight.
Listen, and I'm going to say also, I'm proud of us. We kept these wigs on this entire time, which I think might be a True Crime and Cocktails first.
It is. I don't
Yeah.
think we've ever made it through a full
No.
episode in costume where we haven't removed something. And
Yeah.
I mean, this wig is itchy as hell, but I'm keeping this toucan because this room is freezing cold.
Listen, I
So,
respect it.
yeah. And I'm
Um,
barely wearing a shirt.
Again, that's a dickie under a sweater, folks,
It
in case
is.
you're wondering.
It is full nip out.
Um, but we thank you so much, dear listeners, for joining us for Supernatural Uncovered 2. What a true romp and delight. If you haven't
Yeah.
already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place to buy official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. And hey, go over to the Spotify, the Apple Music, wherever you listen to your music. Give My Single Pathological a stream. Still trying to keep those coming in. And listen, I think it's a killer tune, and I would appreciate the support now and always. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, dead in the water.
What could that be? Who knows? I have no idea. I couldn't be happier about it.
It's a documentary on
I,
Amazon.
I assumed.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I look forward to whatever it is because it's my favorite time of the week and my favorite thing to do. Um, Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night to Harry Burnett Reese because he invented the Reese's peanut butter cup. And it's Halloween.
Good night to Christy Oxborrow as Joel Barish. Thank you for indulging me.
Baby.